You guys are probably looking at that title, and I've got to say, videos like this are what excite me sometimes because I love just reminding certain people that certain artists existed. Because you guys probably forgot about this name. Some of you might not even know who he is, but I do, and I've been interested in talking about him for some time now. Welcome back to 10 Years Later, the series where I look back at records from the 2010s that were either impactful to me personally, to music as a whole, records that were very popular, or records that were just worth revisiting 10 years later for good or bad reasons. And yeah, here's one that you guys probably didn't even know existed. You could see it in the title, but in this video, we're going to be talking about the 2010 Kevin Rudolf album, To the Sky. Kevin Rudolf, if you guys don't know, is a rock artist who first blew up back in the late 2000s and started to make noise when he was signed to the ever-popular record label Cash Money Records, the one, of course, that played host to Lil Wayne and Birdman. And for the label, he was a bit of an anomaly. Cash Money had previously been known for almost entirely housing black hip-hop artists, but he was the first rock artist and the first white artist to sign under the label. Back in 2010, when this album came out, Lil Wayne in particular was particularly fascinated with the idea of becoming a rock musician, almost too much, I would say. And just in case you didn't see my 10 Years Later video on his 2010 album Rebirth, it didn't work. But nevertheless, Kevin Rudolf was almost a gateway for him and for Cash Money as a whole to get into the rock world and try to combine rock music with hip-hop. This venture started with Let It Rock, the major single from Kevin Rudolph's debut album In the City, and a track that got to the top 5 on the Billboard Hot 100 and pretty much became every sports team and network's favorite song for quite a long time afterwards. In 2010, Kevin then went on to make several prominent appearances on the aforementioned Rebirth, as well as Birdman's album Priceless, and then this was his second studio album and to date his last. You're probably wondering what the hell happened to this guy, and trust me, I am too. Kevin completed his contract with Cash Money in 2015, signed to Primary Wave Records, and while he has released a few new singles, including a recent reunion with Lil Wayne, and is supposedly working on a new album, that's what he's been saying for the better part of the last decade. I wondered with his disappearance if I could find any reason behind that on this album, which given that it's 11 tracks and 37 minutes, it wasn't gonna kill me to listen to all of it, so what did I find? Not very much, to be honest. I'll say that I actually listened to the opening track, I Made It Cash Money Heroes, quite a bit in my youth, and honestly, I didn't mind the song. In fact, I actually liked it a little bit better than Let It Rock. Sure, the song basically just builds on the same formula as that track, but I think I've enjoyed it more for some of the vocal performances between Kevin, Birdman, Jay Sean, and Lil Wayne. Does it sound dated? A bit, but I think it's still a pretty fun track, if nothing else. Also, while re-listening to the album, I got to hear the explicit version of the song for the first time. Every time I heard it in the past, it was the clean version, so it was kind of interesting not hearing the curse words censored out this time. Either way, while that was a pretty fun track, the album takes a sour turn all too quickly. Specifically, I noticed it on the track Don't Cry, which means well and lyrically has some good intentions, but it does nothing but feel like a bland, droning electronic song. Kevin's vocals sound okay, but this track feels like it was absolutely made with the intention of grabbing a safe, radio-friendly hit. I Belong to You, LA, New York is also extremely unfulfilling. It's just more pop rock fluff that just reeks of focus grouping. Whoever produced this instrumental, I can't imagine that it took more than about 30 minutes to make it, and while I'm sure Kevin had good intentions based on his vocals, the song itself just feels stale. It's bland, it's repetitive, it almost feels synthetic. You can kind of see through the cracks of it. It's just not that captivating. And then the track What Do You Got has a sound and vibe that makes me think that someone was just listening to a bunch of then popular Lady Gaga songs and wanted to catch that vibe. From the repetitive mixing on the vocals to the pumping quarter note beat, Kevin again just sounds like he's making some generic mix of electronic rock music, hoping that Cash Money markets it well enough to get it to the radio. Beyond the aforementioned I Made It, there's a ton of huge features on this album too, though I'd say very few of them do enough to help lift these tracks, and too often they just make Kevin feel puny on his own body of work. For example, Flowrider appears on the track You Make the Rainfall, which as the second track right after I Made It really sours the album too quickly. It's more bland, overproduced pop rock mush with an extremely sloppy chorus, and Flowrider's verse is just bland. The song as a whole is a bit of a mess. 3 6 Mafia makes their first of 2 appearances on the track What You Waiting For, and I guess the nicest thing that I can say about the song is that DJ Paul and Juicy J have have enough fun with it to stop it from being completely hideous. Otherwise, it's another generic glitzy electronic track that does nothing but bore me. Rivers Cuomo of Weezer slides in for Must Be Dreamin', and I actually kind of like this one and think it works in spite of itself. Yeah, it's got that super glitzy feel to it. It almost feels reminiscent of like an 80s throwback, and it might sound a bit goofy, but I actually like Rivers Cuomo's vocals on the hook, and it sounds smooth enough that I can look past the weirdness of it and enjoy it. Lil Wayne reappears for the track Spit in Your Face, where miraculously he sounds better than he did on Rebirth. That's not a huge compliment, but honestly take the W's where you can. The auto-tune is still annoying. The flows on the verses are fine, I guess. The chorus is unbelievably boring, even though it is kind of funny hearing Lil Wayne say the whole, "Yeah, I'm spitting your face!" And Wayne often makes Kevin feel like a feature on his own song. All I can really say is that it's not nearly as bad as it could have been. And 3 6 Mafia makes their second and final appearance on the penultimate track, Late Night Automatic, which literally just sounds like a redo of Let It Rock. Once again, the song would have been painful if not for the fact that Juicy J and DJ Paul have some bouncy flows, but it's another case where they really make Kevin feel like a feature on his own song and pretty much divert the attention away from him entirely. In terms of high points, outside of the few tracks that I already mentioned that I liked, they are extremely few and far between, and the only other one I can even remotely consider a high point is Big Timer. It's a pretty standard rock track, but it feels like fireworks given so much of what surrounds it. I do like the somewhat emotional vibe of the song with its occasionally lighter acoustic interludes, and Kevin's vocals work well, especially on the chorus, which is one of the few sticky hooks on the album, but not even the closer, Crashing Down, can really save this thing or make it feel special. Sure, some of the vocals aren't bad, and I can imagine Kevin wrote the song with the best intentions in mind, but the instrumental is so blatantly forgettable and it commands no attention whatsoever. It's more overly poppy fluff that doesn't feel even the slightest bit engaging, and it's a pretty weak closer to the album. Overall, as unfortunate as it is, I can kind of see why this guy remained in the past and didn't hit it big after Let It Rock, and to a lesser extent I Made It. I'll say that the album isn't exactly painful, but it just doesn't do anything to command attention. Much of the production sounds very basic, almost hammy to an extent, and made with a clear intention to find radio playability. I don't tend to think much about the term industry plant, and I'm not sure if I could say Kevin was an industry plant for Cash Money, but I wouldn't be surprised if their treatment of him as an artist is comparable to that of an industry plant. And yeah, I've ragged on the production a lot, but in regards to Kevin himself, sure, he sounds decent on the album, but I think my biggest problem is that while listening to this thing, I struggled to find a voice in him. There were few moments, if any, where I felt like Kevin carved out a distinct voice, and too often he would be outshined by his collaborators to the point where I wondered, is Kevin just here to make the choruses happen? I almost wonder while listening if Cash Money had just wanted some radio play, and Kevin being standard enough as an artist was their key to that, so they would just throw him onto their songs so that they could market them and send them to radio and get a bunch of plays. Honestly, that's what it sounds like, and the only thing helping this album is that the songs, if nothing else, aren't ear-piercingly awful. They're just really shallow. I kind of wonder while listening to this if Kevin will ever put out that album that he's supposedly been working on for the last decade. Back in 2010, I probably would have ignored this thing if someone showed it to me. I probably would have asked, who's Kevin Rudolf? And then when someone said that he was the guy who did Let It Rock, I would just go, oh right, that guy, and then walk away. Having listened to it now, I wouldn't have been upset with my younger self skipping this thing, because it's really nothing special. If I had to put it on my rating scale, I would probably give it a bad rating. It's not the most horrific thing I've ever heard, but I can't say it does anything all that interesting. It's sad to say, but listening to this unfortunately made me see why Kevin Rudolf was left in the past. But that is just my opinion on this record. What did you guys think about it? Did you listen to it then? Do you listen to it now? Do you even know who Kevin Rudolf is? Did you like it then? Hate it then? Like it now? Hate it now? Do you have any experiences with this album? Talk about them down in the comments section. Let's keep this civil and have some fun as we like to do. If you guys want to hit like and subscribe, thank you. If not, it's no big deal. I totally understand. I'm not going to beg you for it. In terms of what's next, I am pretty excited because the next record I'll be talking about in this series is Drake's debut album, Thank Me Later. I previously reviewed this album on my blog, but it'll be fun to get to revisit it, and having already heard the album, maybe talk about more personal experiences and try to do something a little bit different than some of the other videos in this series. So stay tuned for that, but until then, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.